देश एकजुट होता है, नेशन फर्स्ट की भावना से भरा होता है, राष्ट्र सर्वोपरि होता है, तो फौलादी फैसलिएगा।
ये नुकसान
how our air defense systems have thwarted the enemy drones, their fighter aircraft, their missiles. We achieved total surprise, and those strikes across those 9 terror hubs left more than 100 terrorists killed.
टेरर और टॉक एक साथ नहीं हो सकते।
India has a new doctrine against terror. In his very first speech after Operation Sindoor, the Indian Prime Minister declared the new approach, which now rests on 3 key elements. A response on India's terms: no tolerance for terror that hides behind nuclear blackmail, and no distinction between the terrorists and the government that sponsors it. Now, the Indian Prime Minister has also declared that the strikes on terror hubs in Pakistan were not a one-time response, but a new national policy against terror. He's also warned Pakistan to get rid of its terror infrastructure if it wants to be saved, before outlining the key 3 pillars of India's security doctrine. Now, any terror attack on India will be met with a strong and a resolute response. The Indian Prime Minister has said that India had merely paused its operations against Pakistan, and future action will depend on Pakistan's behavior. He's also warned Islamabad that terror and talks simply cannot coexist. Now, Narendra Modi said that India had destroyed about 11 military sites and air bases and had eliminated over 100 terrorists in the air strikes that shocked the Pakistani military. Now, the Indian Prime Minister said that Pakistan had contacted India in desperation after suffering heavy losses in the first 3 days of hostilities.
भारत के ड्रोन्स, भारत की मिसाइलों ने सटीकता के साथ हमला किया। पाकिस्तानी वायुसेना के उन एयरबेस को नुकसान पहुंचाया, जिस पर पाकिस्तान को बहुत घमंड था। भारत ने पहले 3 दिनों में ही पाकिस्तान को इतना तबाह कर दिया, जिसका उसे अंदाजा भी नहीं था।
Secondly, nuclear deterrence will no longer shield terror. The Indian Prime Minister said that India will not bow down to nuclear blackmail and made it clear that the responsibility to prevent an escalation now lies with Islamabad.
कोई भी न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल भारत नहीं सहेगा।
Now, the Indian Prime Minister also delivered a pretty stark message. If Pakistan wants to survive, then it must demolish the terror infrastructure that it has been feeding. He asserted that India will not differentiate between terrorists and the government that supports them.
पहला, भारत पर आतंकी हमला हुआ तो मुंह तोड़ जवाब दिया जाएगा। दूसरा, कोई भी न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल भारत नहीं सहेगा। तीसरा, हम आतंक की सरपरस्त सरकार और आतंक के आकाओं को अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे।
With India suspending the Indus Waters Treaty after the Pahalgam terror attack, Narendra Modi declared that water and blood, of course, cannot flow together. And when it comes to the issue of diplomacy, he stated unambiguously that any future talks with Pakistan will only be on the issue of terrorism and on the Pakistani-occupied part of Kashmir and nothing else.
पाकिस्तान से बात होगी तो टेररिज्म पर ही होगी। अगर पाकिस्तान से बात होगी तो पाक ऑक्यूपाइड कश्मीर पीओके उस पर ही होगी.
Now, to put things in perspective, we are joined this broadcast by Ambassador Anil Vadhva. He's joining us live from New Delhi. He's a former Indian envoy to Italy, Thailand, China and Hong Kong, and also a former Secretary East at the Ministry of External Affairs. Ambassador Vadhva, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. And this, of course, is a big statement that the Indian Prime Minister has made, that there is going to be no nuclear blackmail that terrorists can hide behind. What's your perspective, sir? Has India now changed the complete paradigm of, how India deals with terror?
Absolutely. I think we now have a doctrine which has evolved and has actually been shaping since 2016, when India first abandoned strategic restraint with cross-border surgical ground strikes responding to terrorism in Uri. And now we can see Operation Sindoor as a next rung of Operation Bandar, which happened in Balakot in 2019, which became a shorthand for a bolder, more kinetic approach in deterrence. So each iteration has added layers of credibility and precision to India's posture against cross-border terrorism, adding both punitive and preemptive elements to how to reimpose credible deterrence. And this posture has shifted from what we could call strategic ambiguity in the past to one of conditional clarity. That is, cross-border terror will invite cross-border consequences.
Indeed. Now, Pakistan's strategy, this is what it is called, war by 1,000 cuts, to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. And it resorted to this strategy, if one could so call it, because it recognized that it could not take on and defeat India in a conventional war. But now this war by 1,000 cuts has also been made much more expensive for the Pakistanis. Do you think the generals in Rawalpindi will now have a rethink on this flawed idea of a war by 1,000 cuts?
Absolutely, because India has made it clear that that India now has other options. First of all, other than the kinetic action that it has shown during Operation Sindoor, and the Prime Minister has made it clear that the nuclear blackmail is something that India will not tolerate anymore. So that is not a constraint any longer. And so if Pakistan wants to bleed India with 1,000 cuts, then of course there will be action as a reaction to whatever Pakistan undertakes by way of terrorism. So that itself means that Pakistan will have to recalculate its whole calculus about how it goes about perpetrating terrorism against India in the future.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Vadhva, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you.